It was just after midnight on June 23, 2013, inside a dorm room at Vanderbilt University in Nashville. The hallway cameras had already caught the disturbing sight: four football players dragging an unconscious young woman through the corridor, her body limp, her dignity already stripped before she even reached the room. Behind the locked door, the crime began. The 21-year-old student lay unconscious on the floor, helpless, silent, unaware. Around her stood men who should have been protectors, classmates, teammates. But that night, they became her attackers. They pulled at her clothes. They assaulted her while she could not move. They laughed, they posed, they recorded it all on their phones as if it were some twisted game. The acts were so degrading, so cruel, that when detectives later watched the videos, hardened investigators admitted they had to look away. One of the worst things I've ever seen. A prosecutor would later call it. Every second of footage became evidence. Each image a reminder that she had no chance to say no, no chance to fight back. She remembered nothing. She woke up hours later, confused and aching, with no memory of what had been done to her. She didn't know that photos of her body had been passed around like trophies. She didn't know that her trust had been shattered by people she thought were friends. The evidence told the story she could not. Cell phone images, video clips, text messages bragging about what they had done. The same technology they used to humiliate her became the weapon that would destroy their defense and lock them into a future they never imagined. When the case broke, the shock spread far beyond campus. Vanderbilt, an elite university known for its traditions of honor and excellence, was suddenly under a shadow. Parents asked how something like this could happen in a dorm room on a secure campus. Students whispered about safety, betrayal, and silence. The courtroom became a stage for the ugliest truths. Four young men with scholarships, fame, and promise now standing as criminals. The names Vandenberg, Cory Batey, Brandon Banks, and Jaborian McKenzie would no longer be cheered on a football field. They were linked instead to one of the most disturbing campus assault cases in American history. This was not just about one night of drunken choices. This was about a complete betrayal of trust, about cruelty carried out in plain sight, with phones flashing and laughter echoing, while a young woman lay powerless. Welcome to the crime series. Before we begin, do us a quick favor. Drop your location and the time you're watching this in the comments. We want to know where you're tuning in from, because these stories matter everywhere. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a case. To understand how it all went so wrong, we must first understand the men who made these choices. Four young athletes who came to Vanderbilt with dreams, talent, and everything to lose. The first was Brandon, a transfer student from California who thought he had finally found his place. Brandon Vandenberg had traveled over 2,000 miles from the California desert to reach this moment. Born in 1993 in Indio, he was raised by parents who believed athletics could unlock doors that academics alone might not open. At Xavier College Preparatory High School in Palm Desert, Vandenberg discovered his identity on the football field. Standing tall with natural athletic ability, he dominated as a tight end, catching passes and bulldozing through defenders. His coaches recognized something special in the determined young man who treated every practice like his future depended on it. The path to elite college football wasn't handed to Vandenberg. After high school graduation, he enrolled at College of the Desert, a junior college where dreams either died or grew stronger. For 2 years, Vandenberg refined his skills, built his strength, and proved he belonged with the nation's best players. ESPN eventually ranked him as the top junior college tight end in America. When scholarship offers arrived from major universities, Vanderbilt University stood apart from the rest. This wasn't just another football program. This was the Harvard of the South, a prestigious academic institution competing in the SEC, college football's most brutal conference. Head coach James Franklin saw something in Vandenberg that aligned with his vision for transforming Vanderbilt football. Franklin was building a program that could compete with Alabama and Georgia while maintaining academic excellence. When he offered Vandenberg a full scholarship in early 2013, it felt like destiny. Vandenberg arrived on campus as a redshirt sophomore with 2 years of eligibility remaining. The coaching staff had immediate plans for him. His size, speed, and hands made him a perfect fit for Franklin's offensive system. Teammates and coaches expected big things from the California transfer. During spring practice, Vandenberg impressed everyone around the program. He caught passes in traffic, blocked defensive ends, and showed the football intelligence that separated good players from great ones. His work ethic matched his talent, and he quickly earned respect in the locker room. But success on the football field was only part of Vanderbilt's challenge. The academic demands were unlike anything Vandenberg had experienced. Professors expected more, and the student body included some of the brightest minds in America. For a junior college transfer, the adjustment required dedication beyond football. As summer approached in 2013, Vandenberg felt confident about his place at Vanderbilt. He had survived the academic challenges, impressed coaches with his athletic ability, and was building relationships with teammates who would become central figures in his life. The young man from California had no way of knowing that the relationships he was forming would soon lead him down a path that would destroy everything he had worked to achieve. In just a few months, Brandon Vandenberg would transform from a promising student athlete into the ringleader of one of the most shocking crimes in college sports history. But Vandenberg wouldn't act alone. The bonds he was forming with teammates would prove crucial to the events that followed. Among those teammates was Cory Batey, a young man who had grown up just miles from campus, a local star who had dreamed of playing for Vanderbilt his entire life. Born in 1994, Cory Batey had grown up watching Vanderbilt games from the stands, dreaming of the day he would wear the black and gold uniform that represented everything he wanted to become. Batey's roots ran deep in Music City. His mother had worked as a phlebotomist at Vanderbilt's medical clinic for over 30 years, drawing blood samples and caring for patients throughout the university's vast medical system. She was the youngest of 13 children and had instilled in her son the values of hard work, education, and never forgetting where you came from. At Ensworth School, one of Nashville's most elite private institutions, Batey wasn't just another student. He was the star athlete everyone expected to succeed. As a safety on the football team, he possessed the speed and hitting ability that made college coaches take notice. His combination of athleticism and academic achievement at such a prestigious school made him exactly the type of player major universities recruited heavily. But Batey's appeal went beyond statistics and highlight reels. His teammates remember him as magnetic, someone who could light up a room with his smile and easy charisma. He had dreads that framed his handsome face and an infectious laugh that made him popular with classmates throughout Ensworth. Many girls developed crushes on the playful athlete who seemed destined for bigger stages. When James Franklin arrived as Vanderbilt's head coach, keeping local talent at home became a priority. Nashville had watched too many of its best players leave for other SEC schools, and Franklin understood that building community support meant showing hometown players they could achieve their dreams without leaving Tennessee. Batey's recruitment was different from Vandenberg's journey. While Vandenberg had fought his way up from junior college, Batey had been on Vanderbilt's radar since his sophomore year at Ensworth. The coaching staff had watched him develop, attended his games, and built relationships with his family long before offering him a scholarship. When Batey committed to Vanderbilt in 2012, it felt like a homecoming before he had ever left. He was part of Franklin's first full recruiting class, a group of young men who were supposed to help transform the program from SEC doormat into legitimate competitor. Like most freshman football players, Batey was redshirted his first year, allowing him to practice with the team while preserving 4 years of playing eligibility. The redshirt year gave him time to adjust to college-level football, and Vanderbilt's demanding academic expectations, even coming from a school as rigorous as Ensworth. During that crucial first year, Batey lived in Gillette Hall, the athletic dormitory where scholarship athletes lived together, studied together, and formed the bonds that would define their college experience. It was in Gillette Hall that Batey met Brandon Banks and Jaborian McKenzie, two other redshirt freshmen who would become his closest friends and constant companions. The friendship between Batey, Banks, and McKenzie became one of the defining characteristics of their time at Vanderbilt. They were inseparable, studying together in the academic support center, working out together in the weight room, and exploring Nashville's social scene together on weekends. His mother remained a constant presence in his life, proud of her son's achievements but always reminding him of his responsibilities to his family, his community, and himself. She had worked at Vanderbilt long enough to understand both the incredible opportunities the university provided and the expectations that came with them. As Batey prepared for his sophomore season in 2013, everything seemed to be falling into place. The coaching staff praised his work ethic and natural ability. He was expected to compete for significant playing time in the defensive backfield. His academic performance was solid, and his social life was thriving. The young man who had spent his childhood cheering for Vanderbilt from the stands was now part of the program's future. But the relationships that had provided so much support and companionship during his adjustment to college life would soon become the foundation for decisions that would destroy his dreams and send shockwaves through the community that had raised him to succeed. Brandon Banks traveled a longer path to reach Vanderbilt than his future teammates. Born in 1994 in Brandywine, Maryland, Banks grew up in a suburban community outside Washington, D.C., where football was a pathway many young men hoped would lead to college scholarships and better opportunities. Banks attended Gwynn Park High School, where he played both offense and defense, but made his biggest impact as a defensive back. At 5'9" and athletic, he had the speed and instincts that college coaches sought in defensive players. His performance on the field caught the attention of recruiters from several universities. The recruitment process for Banks was competitive. Programs throughout the region and beyond showed interest in the talented defensive back. But when Vanderbilt offered him a scholarship, the opportunity to play in the Southeastern Conference while earning a degree from a prestigious university was too good to pass. Like Batey, Banks was part of James Franklin's 2012 recruiting class and was redshirted his freshman year. The transition from Maryland to Tennessee required adjustments beyond just geography. The culture of SEC football was more intense than anything Banks had experienced in high school. Banks embraced the challenge and quickly formed bonds with his teammates. He was particularly close to Batey and McKenzie, the three young men becoming inseparable during their redshirt year. They studied together, worked out together, and spent their free time exploring Nashville and the social opportunities available to college athletes. The friendship between Banks, Batey, and McKenzie became one of the defining characteristics of their time at Vanderbilt. They were often seen together around campus and in Gillette Hall, where they all lived. Their teammates and coaches viewed them as a tight-knit group who supported each other through the challenges of college football. During his redshirt year, Banks focused on developing his skills and understanding the defensive schemes that would be crucial to his success on the field. The coaching staff was pleased with his progress and work ethic. He was expected to compete for significant playing time as a sophomore. Banks also took his academic responsibilities seriously. Vanderbilt's academic reputation meant that all student athletes needed to maintain high standards in the classroom. The university provided academic support services, but the work still required dedication and discipline. As the 2013 season approached, Banks felt prepared for the increased role he expected to have with the football team. He had developed physically during his redshirt year and felt more confident in his understanding of the defensive system. The young man from Maryland had successfully made the transition to one of college football's most competitive conferences. His coaches were optimistic about his potential, and his teammates respected his work ethic and dedication. But the friendship that had been such a positive force in Banks' adjustment to college life would soon become the foundation for decisions that would destroy his football career and land him in prison. The bonds he had formed with Batey and McKenzie would prove to be both his greatest comfort and his ultimate downfall. The trio was nearly complete, but there was one more piece to this puzzle. The fourth member of their group came from the rural South, carrying with him the hopes of a small town and the weight of expectations that only a scholarship athlete from Mississippi could understand. Jaborian McKenzie understood pressure in ways his new friends from Nashville and Maryland could never fully grasp. Known to everyone as Tip, he had arrived at Vanderbilt carrying not just his own dreams, but the hopes of an entire community back in Woodville, Mississippi, a small town where his success represented possibilities that few residents had ever imagined. Born in 1994, McKenzie grew up in a place where Friday night high school football games were the heartbeat of social life. Woodville High School's stadium filled with families, farmers, and local business owners who treated successful players like hometown heroes. For young men in rural Mississippi, athletic scholarships weren't just opportunities. They were lifelines out of limited economic prospects. McKenzie played multiple positions for Woodville, but was primarily recruited as a receiver. At 6'1" with good speed, he had the size and athleticism that college coaches valued in pass catchers. His performance on the field earned recognition from recruiting services and scholarship offers from several universities. When Vanderbilt offered McKenzie a scholarship, it represented an opportunity to escape the limited economic prospects of rural Mississippi. Like many young men from small southern towns, McKenzie saw football as his best chance for a college education and a different kind of future. The transition from Woodville to Nashville was dramatic. McKenzie had never lived in a major city, and Vanderbilt's campus was unlike anything he'd experienced. The academic expectations were particularly challenging for someone whose high school had limited resources compared to the elite preparatory schools that sent many students to Vanderbilt. McKenzie was also part of Franklin's 2012 recruiting class and was redshirted his freshman year. The extra year proved valuable as he adjusted to college life and the demands of SEC football. He worked hard to improve his strength and speed while learning the offensive system. His friendship with Batey and Banks provided stability during a difficult transition period. The three young men supported each other through homesickness, academic challenges, and the pressure of competing for playing time on a major college football team. McKenzie's personality was different from his two closest friends. While Batey was outgoing and charismatic, and Banks was steady and focused, McKenzie was often described as more reserved and thoughtful. Teammates respected his work ethic and his willingness to help others. The coaching staff was optimistic about McKenzie's potential as a receiver. He had good hands and ran precise routes, skills that would be valuable in Franklin's offensive system. As his sophomore season approached, McKenzie was expected to contribute to the team's passing game. His family back in Mississippi followed his progress closely. For a small town like Woodville, having a player at a major university was a source of community pride. McKenzie understood the responsibility that came with representing his hometown on such a stage. As the summer of 2013 progressed, McKenzie felt confident about his place on the team and his academic progress. He had survived the challenging transition from rural Mississippi to one of the nation's top universities. His friendship with Batey and Banks had been crucial to his success. But the loyalty that McKenzie felt toward his teammates would soon be tested in ways he could never have imagined. The young man who had worked so hard to escape the limitations of his small-town background was about to make choices that would define the rest of his life. While the four football players were establishing themselves at Vanderbilt, another student was pursuing her own academic goals at the prestigious university. She had come to Nashville from Oklahoma, drawn by Vanderbilt's reputation for academic excellence and the opportunities it provided for ambitious students. Born in 1992, she was a year older than most of the football players who would later cross her path. Her background was different from the athletes who had been recruited primarily for their physical abilities. She had earned her place at Vanderbilt through academic achievement and standardized test scores that reflected years of dedicated study. Her decision to attend Vanderbilt was based on the university's strength in neuroscience, a field that fascinated her and promised a challenging but rewarding career path. The program was highly competitive, accepting only students who had demonstrated exceptional ability in mathematics and science. As a junior in 2013, she had already established herself as a serious student who balanced academic demands with campus involvement. She was a member of the dance team, performing at basketball games and other university events. The position required athletic ability and commitment, as the team practiced regularly and maintained high standards for its members. Her involvement with the dance team connected her to Vanderbilt's athletic department in ways that many students never experienced. She attended team events, interacted with coaches and athletic staff, and occasionally helped with recruiting activities when prospective athletes visited campus. During the spring of 2013, she met Vandenberg through these recruiting connections. He was new to campus, having transferred from junior college, and she was among the students who helped introduce him to Vanderbilt's social scene. Their relationship began casually, as many college relationships do. They attended parties together, went to bars popular with students, and spent time getting to know each other. For Vandenberg, who was still adjusting to life at Vanderbilt, the relationship provided social connections and a sense of belonging. She was described by friends as someone who worked hard but also enjoyed the social aspects of college life. Her academic performance remained strong despite her involvement in extracurricular activities and her social relationships. As the summer of 2013 approached, she was looking forward to her senior year and the challenges of completing her neuroscience degree. She had plans for graduate school and a career in scientific research. Her relationship with Vandenberg seemed like a typical college romance that might or might not survive the pressures of academic and athletic commitments. But the events of June 23, 2013, would change everything. The promising student who had worked so hard to earn her place at Vanderbilt was about to become the victim of a crime that would overshadow all her achievements and alter the course of her life in ways she could never have imagined. June 22, 2013, began like many other Saturday nights on Vanderbilt's campus. Students were enjoying the freedom of summer break, and those who remained in Nashville were taking advantage of the city's nightlife. The Tin Roof, a popular bar near campus, was crowded with college students and young professionals. Vandenberg and his girlfriend arrived at the Tin Roof that evening, planning to spend time with friends and enjoy a night out. The bar was known for its relaxed atmosphere and its popularity with Vanderbilt students and athletes. The evening started normally, with drinks and conversation among friends. Vandenberg was still relatively new to Nashville's social scene, but he was beginning to feel more comfortable in his new environment. His girlfriend, now entering her senior year, was a familiar face at the establishment. As the night progressed, both consumed multiple alcoholic beverages. According to later testimony, Vandenberg gave his girlfriend several drinks, including one he called a California Long Island iced tea. The blue-colored drink would be the last thing she remembered clearly from that night. By the time they left the Tin Roof after midnight, both were heavily intoxicated. They took a taxi to her apartment complex, where she lost one of her high heels and struggled to unlock her front door. The effects of alcohol made simple tasks difficult. From her apartment, they went to Vandenberg's dormitory room in Gillette Hall. Surveillance cameras throughout the building would later provide crucial evidence about what happened next. But those cameras could not capture the full scope of the criminal acts that were about to occur. In the dormitory, Vandenberg encountered his teammates Cory Batey, Brandon Banks, and Jaborian McKenzie. The three had been drinking and socializing in their rooms when Vandenberg arrived with his unconscious girlfriend. What unfolded in that dorm room was not a fleeting crime. For over 30 minutes, the unconscious student was subjected to repeated and degrading acts that would later be proven in court through video clips, photographs, and testimony. The assault was not only sexual in nature, it was marked by violence, humiliation, and an almost calculated disregard for her humanity. The young woman, completely unconscious throughout, incapable of giving consent, incapable of resisting, incapable of even comprehending what was happening. Yet the men treated her body as if it were a stage for their cruelty. At least one of them urinated on her, mocking her while making racially charged slurs. Others posed for photos and recorded short videos, at times laughing and making comments that revealed the callous mindset driving their actions. The images captured on cell phones revealed more than 40 photographs and multiple video recordings of the attack. These files were later recovered by police and became central to the prosecution's case. Investigators and prosecutors who reviewed them described the material as among the worst evidence they had ever encountered. The fact that the perpetrators not only carried out the assault but also chose to document it made the cruelty even starker. It was a crime meant not just to violate but to boast about. The abuse went beyond sexual assault. Objects were forced into her private areas, adding another layer of injury and humiliation. Prosecutors later told the court that this detail, captured on photographs and videos, demonstrated not only a sexual violation but also deliberate cruelty. It showed the attackers were not acting on impulse. They were carrying out acts meant to degrade, dehumanize, and leave lasting harm. Adding to the tragedy was the presence of bystanders. Several other students saw parts of what was happening, but chose not to intervene. Some helped move her body, assisting the perpetrators instead of stopping them. Others witnessed and simply walked away, leaving her to suffer without aid. Their silence and failure to report what they had seen became a damning element in the wider story, raising questions about complicity and the culture of looking the other way. When the assault finally ended, the perpetrators did not show remorse. Instead, they focused on covering their tracks. They attempted to clean up evidence, removing traces of bodily fluids and trying to make the dorm room appear undisturbed. The victim eventually woke up alone in an unfamiliar room, confused and in pain. She had no memory of what had occurred and initially did not understand what had happened to her. She found vomit in her hair, bruises on her body, and blood on her clothing. Before we continue, do us a quick favor. Hit that like button if you believe stories like this should never be forgotten. And make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you never miss the next case here on the Crime Series. Now, let's get back to the story. 2 days passed before anyone in authority realized that a serious crime had been committed in Gillette Hall. The delay in discovery was not because the perpetrators had successfully covered their tracks, but because the evidence came to light through an unrelated incident. On Monday, June 24, 2013, Vanderbilt housing staff were investigating vandalism in Gillette Hall. Someone had damaged doors on the building's second floor, bending them off their hinges. The damage was significant enough to require review of security footage to identify those responsible. G.L. Black, Vanderbilt's Associate Dean and Director of Student Conduct and Academic Integrity, received a call around 4:30 p.m. about suspicious video footage. Housing staff members reviewing surveillance cameras had seen something that concerned them enough to contact university officials. The surveillance footage showed 4 men carrying an unconscious woman into the dormitory. The timestamp indicated the incident had occurred during the early morning hours of June 23. The woman appeared to be completely incapacitated, unable to support her own weight or respond to her surroundings. Black immediately understood the seriousness of what he was seeing. This was not typical student misconduct or a violation of dormitory rules. The footage suggested that a serious crime had been committed, one that required immediate involvement of law enforcement. University officials quickly worked to identify the individuals in the surveillance footage. The men were clearly students, and their presence in an athletic dormitory suggested they might be members of sports teams. Within hours, officials had identified them as Vanderbilt football players. The discovery prompted immediate action from multiple university departments. Campus police, student affairs officials, and athletic department representatives were all notified about the footage and its implications. The university's legal team was also consulted about proper procedures for handling such serious allegations. On June 26, Vanderbilt police contacted the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department, to request assistance with the investigation. This decision was significant because it meant the case would be handled by experienced criminal investigators rather than campus security officers. Detective Mayo from the Metro Nashville Police Department's Sex Crimes Unit was assigned to the case. He arrived at Vanderbilt's administrative building to review the evidence and interview the victim, who had been contacted by university officials. The victim's reaction to being shown the surveillance footage was documented in police reports. She was described as somewhat confused and dumbfounded about the events. She had no memory of what had occurred and was seeing evidence of her own assault for the first time. The investigation quickly expanded as detectives realized the scope of what had happened. The surveillance footage was just the beginning. Cell phone records and digital evidence would soon reveal the full extent of the crimes committed that night. University officials faced immediate decisions about how to handle the football players involved. The surveillance footage provided clear evidence that they had committed serious crimes, but criminal charges had not yet been filed. The university needed to balance due process concerns with public safety and institutional integrity. On June 29, 2013, just 6 days after the assault occurred, Vanderbilt announced that 4 football players had been dismissed from the team and banned from campus. The university did not initially provide details about the reasons for the dismissals, citing privacy concerns and the ongoing investigation. The dismissals sent shockwaves through the athletic department and the broader Vanderbilt community. Coach James Franklin, who had recruited 3 of the 4 players, was forced to address questions about the situation while being limited in what he could say publicly about an ongoing criminal investigation. As word of the investigation spread, it became clear that this case would have implications far beyond the 4 individuals directly involved. As Metro Nashville police detectives delved deeper into the case, the scope of evidence became overwhelming. What had started with surveillance footage quickly expanded into a complex investigation involving digital forensics, witness interviews, and recovery of disturbing photographic and video evidence. Detective Chad Gish, a specialist in digital evidence recovery, was brought in to examine the cell phones belonging to the 4 football players. Modern smartphones contain vast amounts of data, and investigators knew that if the perpetrators had documented their crimes, the evidence would likely be found on their devices. The digital forensics revealed more than investigators had anticipated. Not only had the perpetrators photographed and recorded their assault, but they had also shared some of this content with others. More than 40 graphic images and several videos were recovered from the defendants' phones. The evidence showed that Vandenberg had sent photos and videos to friends in California while the assault was occurring. Miles Finley and Joseph Quinzio, his former high school teammates, received text messages containing graphic content. Their responses to these messages would later become evidence in the criminal proceedings. Investigators also discovered that some of the digital evidence had been deliberately deleted. The perpetrators had attempted to destroy proof of their crimes, but forensic specialists were able to recover much of the deleted material from the phone's memory systems. The investigation revealed a disturbing pattern of behavior that extended beyond the assault itself. Several individuals who learned about the crimes took steps to help cover them up, rather than reporting them to authorities. This included other football players who had witnessed portions of the incident. Chris Boyd, a wide receiver on the football team, emerged as a key figure in the cover-up attempt. Text message records showed that he had advised the perpetrators to delete evidence and had encouraged others to remain silent about what they had witnessed. As investigators interviewed witnesses, they discovered that multiple people had seen the unconscious victim in distress, but had failed to intervene or seek help. Some had even assisted in moving her unconscious body without questioning what was happening or checking on her welfare. The witness interviews painted a picture of a campus culture where bystanders failed to take action even when confronted with obvious signs that a serious crime was occurring. This aspect of the case would later become a focus of discussions about campus safety and bystander intervention. Meanwhile, prosecutors were building their case against the four main perpetrators. The evidence was extensive and graphic, providing clear documentation of multiple serious felonies. The challenge would be presenting this evidence to juries while maintaining the dignity of the victim and following legal procedures. As the investigation continued through the summer of 2013, it became clear that this case would involve far more than just the four primary perpetrators. The web of people who had knowledge of the crimes, assisted in cover-up attempts, or failed to report what they witnessed included numerous members of the Vanderbilt community. On August 9, 2013, nearly 7 weeks after the assault occurred, Brandon Vandenberg, Cory Batey, Brandon Banks, and Jaborian McKenzie were formally indicted by a Davidson County grand jury. Each faced multiple counts of aggravated rape and aggravated sexual battery. The first trial in the Vanderbilt case commenced in January 2015, nearly 18 months after the assault, with Brandon Vandenberg and Cory Batey facing charges together before Judge Monte Watkins in Davidson County Criminal Court. The extensive media attention surrounding the case created significant challenges during jury selection, as finding impartial jurors proved difficult given the widespread coverage. Prosecutor Tom Thurman built the state's case around a compelling premise that the defendants had essentially documented their own crimes through cell phone videos and photographs. This evidence formed the backbone of the prosecution's strategy, presenting graphic recordings that clearly showed the assault taking place while the victim remained unconscious throughout the attack. Defense attorneys faced an uphill battle defending clients whose actions had been captured on video. Warwick Robinson, representing Batey, argued that extreme intoxication had rendered his client incapable of forming criminal intent, attempting to shift responsibility to alcohol consumption and campus culture. Randall Reagan, defending Vandenberg, contended that his client had not physically assaulted the victim and should not bear responsibility for others' actions, though this strategy proved problematic given evidence of Vandenberg's orchestrating role. The trial featured testimony from several key witnesses over 12 days. Jaborian McKenzie provided crucial insider details as part of a cooperation agreement, offering prosecutors an account of each defendant's role that night. The victim herself testified about her trauma and complete lack of memory regarding the assault. Chris Boyd revealed the extent of cover-up efforts and how multiple people had knowledge of the crimes but failed to report them. Expert witnesses explained the digital evidence and timeline established through surveillance cameras and cell phone records. After just over 3 hours of deliberation, the jury returned guilty verdicts on January 27, 2015. Vandenberg was convicted on 5 counts of aggravated rape, 2 counts of aggravated sexual battery, tampering with evidence, and unlawful photography, while Batey was found guilty on 4 counts of aggravated rape, 1 count of attempted aggravated rape, and 2 counts of aggravated sexual battery. However, this initial victory for prosecutors would prove temporary, as the convictions would later be overturned due to juror misconduct, necessitating entirely new trials. The retrials were scheduled separately, allowing prosecutors to tailor their cases more specifically to each defendant's individual actions. Batey's retrial in April 2016 featured similar evidence, but with greater focus on his specific role in the assault. Despite defense arguments about extreme intoxication impairing his judgment, the jury found the video evidence overwhelming and convicted him on all counts after less than 3 hours of deliberation. Vandenberg's retrial in June 2016 proved equally decisive, with prosecutors presenting extensive evidence of his orchestrating role and documentation of the assault. His conviction on all counts after just over 4 hours of deliberation included 5 counts of aggravated rape, 2 counts of aggravated sexual battery, and unlawful photography. Brandon Banks finally faced trial in June 2017, with prosecutors focusing specifically on his participation, despite defense claims that he was merely present. His attorneys portrayed him as a follower, pressured by more dominant teammates, but the prosecution's case was strengthened by Banks's own admissions during police interviews about taking photographs and touching the victim inappropriately. Jaborian McKenzie's testimony also proved particularly damaging, as he testified that Banks had used a water bottle to sexually assault the victim while being encouraged by Vandenberg. On June 23, 2017, exactly 4 years after the original assault, the jury found Brandon Banks guilty of aggravated rape and aggravated sexual battery. This conviction meant that 3 of the 4 main defendants had now been found guilty by separate juries, leaving only McKenzie's case unresolved. The successful prosecutions demonstrated Tennessee courts' commitment to holding all participants accountable, regardless of their level of involvement, establishing important precedents about group criminal responsibility and the documentation of sexual crimes. The sentencing hearings for the convicted defendants provided the victim with her first opportunity to address her attackers directly. These proceedings, held between July 2016 and August 2017, offered a glimpse into the lasting impact of the crimes and the human cost of the defendants' actions. Cory Batey was the first to be sentenced, appearing before Judge Monty Watkins on July 15, 2016. The victim chose to speak at his sentencing hearing, delivering a powerful statement about how the assault had changed her life forever. "It's hard for me to stand here on display and speak to you today about the impact this has had on my life," she began, addressing Batey directly. Her voice carried the weight of nearly 3 years of legal proceedings and personal trauma. She described how the assault had shattered her sense of safety and her faith in the world around her. "What was possible in my world is now gone," she said. "I thought the world was a better place than it is." Her words conveyed not just personal pain, but a fundamental loss of innocence about human nature. The victim asked Judge Watkins to impose the maximum sentence of 25 years, emphasizing that the defendants had shown no genuine remorse for their actions. Despite her request, Judge Watkins sentenced Batey to 15 years in prison, the minimum allowed under Tennessee law for his crimes. The complete sentence included lifetime registration as a sex offender and the requirement to serve 100% of his prison term with no possibility of parole under Tennessee's aggravated rape statute. Batey is currently serving his sentence at Riverbend Maximum Security Institution. Batey addressed the court before his sentencing, reading a prepared statement in which he claimed to be deeply sorry for his foolish behavior. He maintained that his actions were not intentional and that he had no recollection of the events, attributing his behavior to extreme intoxication. Judge Watkins called the case one of the saddest he had ever encountered, noting that all the defendants would effectively receive life sentences due to their requirement to register as sex offenders. The registry requirement would follow them for the rest of their lives, affecting their ability to find employment, housing, and social acceptance. Brandon Vandenberg was sentenced on November 4, 2016, receiving 17 years in prison. The longer sentence reflected his role as the ringleader who had orchestrated the assault and documented it for others. Prosecutors had argued that Vandenberg's actions showed particular callousness and premeditation. Brandon Banks received his sentence on August 18, 2017, also receiving the minimum 15-year term. At his sentencing hearing, the victim again spoke about the ongoing impact of the crimes, noting that Banks had continued to blame others rather than accepting responsibility for his actions. The victim expressed frustration that Banks had actually visited college campuses to speak about sexual assault while his case was pending, presenting himself as someone who had learned from his mistakes. She saw this as further evidence of his lack of genuine remorse and his continued manipulation of the situation for his own benefit. Throughout the sentencing hearings, the victim demonstrated remarkable strength and eloquence in describing her experience. She had completed her neuroscience degree at Vanderbilt and was pursuing graduate studies, showing that she had not allowed the assault to derail her academic goals. However, she also made clear that the trauma continued to affect her daily life. She described ongoing nightmares, anxiety, and the difficulty of trusting others. The legal proceedings themselves had been re-traumatizing, forcing her to relive the assault multiple times in public settings. The sentences reflected Tennessee's mandatory minimums for aggravated rape, but they also represented the culmination of years of legal proceedings that had tested the endurance of everyone involved. The victim's willingness to see the cases through to conclusion had been essential to securing convictions. Defense attorneys announced their intentions to appeal all convictions, meaning that the legal proceedings would continue for several more years. The defendants would remain in prison during the appeals process, but the victim would continue to live with uncertainty about the finality of the verdicts. The sentencing hearings had provided a measure of closure, but they also highlighted the lasting impact of sexual violence on survivors. The victim's courage in speaking publicly about her experience contributed to broader conversations about campus sexual assault and the importance of believing and supporting survivors. As his 3 co-defendants served prison sentences, Jaborian McKenzie remained free on bond while prosecutors considered his case. His cooperation with the investigation and testimony against his former teammates had earned him consideration for a plea agreement, but his ultimate fate remained uncertain until May 2018. McKenzie's situation was unique among the 4 main defendants. While video evidence showed his presence during the assault, prosecutors acknowledged that he had not been seen physically touching the victim. His primary role appeared to be helping carry the unconscious victim into the dormitory and taking photographs of the assault. However, McKenzie's presence during the crimes and his failure to intervene or seek help for the victim meant that he bore legal responsibility under Tennessee law. His cooperation with prosecutors had been valuable in securing convictions against the other defendants, but it could not eliminate his culpability entirely. On May 21, 2018, nearly 5 years after the assault occurred, McKenzie appeared in court to accept a plea agreement that would resolve his case without a trial. The agreement represented a compromise that acknowledged both his cooperation and his criminal responsibility. Under the terms of the plea deal, McKenzie pleaded guilty to facilitation of aggravated rape, a felony charge that carried serious consequences despite being less severe than the charges faced by his co-defendants. He was sentenced to 10 years of supervised probation and lifetime registration as a sex offender. The sentence meant that McKenzie would not serve prison time, making him the only one of the 4 main defendants to avoid incarceration. However, the probation requirements were extensive and would significantly restrict his freedom for the next decade. Deputy District Attorney Roger Moore emphasized McKenzie's cooperation with the investigation, noting that his testimony had been crucial in securing convictions against the other defendants. His cooperation spanned literally almost 5 years, Moore told reporters, explaining the reasoning behind the plea agreement. The victim chose not to attend McKenzie's sentencing hearing, but prosecutors read a statement on her behalf. The statement expressed mixed feelings about the resolution of McKenzie's case, acknowledging his cooperation while maintaining that all participants should be held accountable for their actions. The resolution of McKenzie's case marked the end of the criminal proceedings against the 4 main defendants. However, several other individuals who had been charged with accessory crimes and evidence tampering still faced legal consequences for their roles in the cover-up attempts. Chris Boyd, the football player who had helped coordinate the cover-up, had previously accepted a plea agreement that resulted in 1 year of unsupervised probation. His case had been resolved quickly due to his cooperation with investigators. Miles Finley and Joseph Quinzio, Vandenberg's friends from California who had received video evidence of the assault, had also accepted plea agreements for their roles in evidence tampering. Their cases demonstrated the far-reaching consequences of the crimes that had occurred in Gillette Hall. With McKenzie's sentencing, the victim could finally begin to move forward without the uncertainty of pending criminal proceedings. While appeals would continue for several years, the main legal battle was complete, and all participants had been held accountable through the criminal justice system. The case had taken nearly 5 years to resolve completely, a length of time that reflected both the complexity of the evidence and the determination of prosecutors to hold all participants accountable for their actions. The victim's persistence in seeing the cases through to conclusion had been essential to achieving this comprehensive result. This brings us to the end of this case, a story of betrayal, cruelty, and choices that destroyed lives. What are your thoughts? Did justice truly prevail? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's talk about it. Don't forget to like this video, share it so more people learn about the dangers of silence, and subscribe to the channel for more real crime stories every week. Turn on notifications so you never miss a case here on the Crime Series. Because these stories matter, and remembering them is how we make sure they are never repeated.